Welcome, everyone. And for those online joining us, welcome to the Investor Summit. We have here today Greg Gorgas, the CEO of Artelo Biosciences. Take it away.
Thank you very much. And it's great to be back, I should say, back out in circulation and back here in New York after a 2-year break. I'm going to be presenting Artelo Biosciences. We are up on the NASDAQ under the symbol ARTL. And for those that are joining online, I'll also welcome you. I will be making some forward-looking statements. We would invite all investors to go to our website at artelobio.com, where all of our financial disclosures as well as regular disclosures of the company are available. Today, there are 5 areas that I'd like to anchor in our conversation. One is that we have a novel drug pipeline, not a single asset, that there are near-term milestones coming up in the next 3, 6, 12, and 18 months. Billion-dollar markets represent the platform and what we're aiming for with all of our programs, that we have a rich and robust patent estate, which will amplify, and a leadership team that has proven itself in the past and has the resolve to make this work for Artelo. We are a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company. We're targeting lipid signaling for all of our programs, and we're focused in on patients that are experiencing cancer or other serious diseases. As a quick overview to the company and our portfolio, I'm going to represent the 3 programs that are on this and unpack those for you as we go through our conversation today. Artelo 2713 is a cannabinoid receptor agonist targeting anorexia in cancer patients. How serious that is, I'm going to share with you in just a moment. But today, it's about a $2 billion market opportunity. That's without any approved drugs to treat. And this we licensed in, originally developed from AstraZeneca. The second program that I'll be speaking about today is Artelo 2612. This is a fatty acid binding protein inhibitor. It's really a platform for the company. And we have a number of assets, but our main and top focus right now is on multiple forms of cancer. This was licensed to us from Stony Brook University with a very rich patent estate today, with issued, but also pending patents all on composition of matter and methods of use. Last but not least is Artelo 1211. This is homegrown at Artelo. It's our own invention. We don't owe any milestones or royalties to someone else. This is the first and only composition of matter patent on a co-crystal of cannabidiol, or otherwise known as CBD. We're targeting post-traumatic stress disorder, but you can think about this as potentially applicable in any place that you think CBD might be useful for patients. Let's unpack the first program. To begin here, I'd really like to just bring you back to when I was 23 years of age. When I was 23 years of age, I was a young pharmaceutical salesperson, and a physician by the name of Tom Lossing invited me to go on a ride-along. I didn't know physicians even still made house calls, but he got his black leather bag and a white coat, gave me an extra white coat. We got in his car and we drove about 45 minutes away. And I was trying to learn about the oncology space. And so I thought this was great car time to be able to chat with Dr. Lossing. But we went into the first house and he saw a patient. He hung some chemotherapy for the patient and talked to the caregivers that were there. And I saw this frail old woman laying in bed. And we got back out into the car and he just had one question for me as we were driving away. He said, "How old do you think that woman is?" Just curious. And I said, "Well, now remember I was 23. I said, "I don't know, she looks older than my grandmother. She's got to be in her 80s or something." And he goes, "She's 46 years of age. She started with about 152 pounds in weight and is now down to about 80 pounds in weight." And I saw what that cancer anorexia can do for a patient. This patient actually is a similar patient. This is a patient participating in our clinical trial. He said it was scary when he just pulls up his trousers and they drop right back to the floor. This patient has been through our clinical study and happy to report it's one of the responding patients that slept better at night, actually gained weight, and didn't feel like he was drugged, and We have videotape of him. We're going to use that in a later video of the company, because he's really representative, emblematic of what we're trying to do for these patients. Sadly, that patient, when I was 23, obviously passed on, but maybe we can provide a better quality of life to patients with our drug. And in fact, one of the things that physicians have told us is not so much just offering them a better quality of life and restoring their weight, but it's being able to keep them healthy so that they can participate in the cancer journey, so they can participate in more chemotherapy or biological therapy to treat their cancer. This is a global problem, and it is a significant unmet need. 6 out of every 10 late-stage cancer patients suffer from profound anorexia. It's just loss. It's loss of appetite, loss of weight, loss of muscle, loss of quality of life, and eventual loss of life itself. Now, there's no standard of care currently today. In fact, if you look at the guidelines, either in Europe or the United States, there is no standard of care. There's no FDA-approved drug to treat this condition. There are a number of attempts by physicians to try and restore appetite and improve weight and quality of life in patients. In fact, one of the leading drugs used in the area is Decadron, or steroids, but steroids cannot be given long-term. It's a temporary short-term solution that can be immunosuppressive. So really, physicians are without tools, effective tools today, to treat cancer anorexia. So what is our drug? It is not a drug that comes from a plant. It's not a drug that comes from the sky or the soil. It came out of the labs of AstraZeneca. It's a synthetic new chemical entity. It's got 2 really important features. One is that it is a dual CB1, CB2 full agonist of those receptors. And second, it's a peripherally selective or restricted drug. Our drug is taken orally once a day, and it targets the receptors in the gut region of the endocannabinoid system that sends a signal up to the brain that a patient would have hunger, or they need feeding. Just to show you, and this is from the preclinical work, a picture of a monkey where the drug is radio-labeled and lit up. You can see that the drug goes to the areas outside of the CNS. This is like a heat map, so where it's blue or cold is where the drug is not targeting, and where it's warm is where the drug is targeting. What we have also seen in the clinical profile from the data that AstraZeneca has is that the intensity of adverse events and the frequency of that increases with dose, which would be expected from a drug effect. Now, this is really an important slide for us to see. This is data from AstraZeneca, and I think it's really important to just see a couple of observations here. They did a phase 1 study, a multiple ascending dose study with 50 patients. Some were randomized to placebo, and the rest to active drug. 5 different dose levels, 2 patients at placebo at each dose level, and 8 patients on active drug. And those on active drug are represented by the blue bars on this chart in front of you. And those that were getting placebo received no drug, and are represented by the orange on the graph in front of you. And it doesn't take a real rocket scientist to figure out there's a predominance of orange bars on the left-hand side of the page and a predominance of blue bars on the right-hand side of the page. And if you look at the p-value down below, the p-value is 0.0001. That's a pretty remarkable p-value showing significance of what the data was from AstraZeneca. This is percentage weight gain over just 12 days. Our study is actually treating over 12 weeks. But if you just look in the middle where there's 3%, draw a horizontal line, you can see there's a significant number of patients did greater than 3% weight gain in just 12 days. Now, you can judge by looking at me. I weigh approximately 200 pounds. That's me gaining 6 pounds in just 12 days. That would be a pretty significant impact on weight. That's the data from AstraZeneca. So what is our conviction? What are we doing about it? We're currently enrolling, and have been since April of last year, the Cancer Appetite Recovery Study. This is also known as the CARE study. It's a phase 1b/2a. It's one study divided into 2 parts. The first part is to determine the dose for the second part. The first part is an open label trial of at least 18 patients, maybe 24, depending on whether or not we go to a fourth dose. And this is to determine the appropriate dose for the phase 2 portion, which is randomized against placebo. What we're measuring here is lean body mass, increases in appetite, quality of life. That'll include things like you saw from the patient earlier of improvements in sleep. And last but not least, in the phase 2, we'll be also measuring patients' activity. They'll be wearing like a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, which on their wrist. And it's not a smartwatch. It's a dumb watch. They can't program it, and it just feeds data to the clinical site that can monitor what their activity is. And this will tell us if that second element, not only the weight loss and loss of appetite, but also that muscle wasting or that cachexia is also potentially improving because they're retaining that muscle, which our drug preclinically looks to have positively benefited. We're currently enrolling in this. We do expect data very, very soon, and to be able to announce that we're moving into the phase 2 study. The lead investigator here is Dr. Barry Laird. He's one of the co-authors of those ESPN guidelines. He's a real leader in this space. We're privileged to have him as our principal investigator. Just as a quick snapshot of what the trial looks like, the 3 or maybe 4 doses that I've said of the phase 1 are represented in the first stage, and then the randomization is represented in the second stage on this slide. As I said, the milestones highlighted in the purple here are the milestones that we're really excited about sharing this year, not only the complete phase 1B, but also the phase 2 study of the cancer appetite recovery study. To keep us at pace, I'd like to move us on to our second program. This is a preclinical program. So I want to separate in your mind cancer anorexia and move on to really treating cancer patients directly for their cancer. So lipid signaling, I believe, is one of the next future opportunities. And Artelo is a leading company. In fact, we have the leading small molecule development program in the world targeting fatty acid binding protein 5 with an inhibitor. So inside the cell, there is a chaperone for fatty acids. This chaperone I'm going to call the taxi driver. And the taxi driver inside the cell, his job is to pick up fatty acids or customers, so to speak, and move them around the cell to the location that they're supposed to go to. And in the case of fatty acids, when they come inside the cell, this taxi or the fatty acid binding protein takes that fatty acid and moves it into the nuclear receptor. And when it does, it stimulates a lot of activity like angiogenesis and migration of cells and local cell growth. And normally, under normal conditions, for all of us without a cancer diagnosis sitting in the room, that would be fine. But in the presence of cancer, this can be upregulated or increased. And if you genetically silence this, like seen in chart A, you get a nice anti-proliferative effect, basically eliminating the taxi drivers. In aggressive tumors, those that have high metabolic need, you can see that there is a higher, this is in chart B, higher expression of fatty acid binding protein 5. Triple negative breast cancer indicated in chart C, one of the more difficult breast cancers to treat, has a higher expression. And it's not surprising the Kaplan-Meier curve in chart D shows that there's a worsening of survival. So what do you do about it? Well, if you could inhibit this with a drug called Artelo 2612, this is work from not Stony Brook University, where we licensed the drug, but from University of Liverpool. And they took our drug in a model of highly metastatic castration-resistant prostate cancer and showed, basically recapitulated the knockout mice data from the data from the previous slide. And you can see that the mice that had the inhibitor on board had much less cancer growth than those mice that had that were unprotected. Stony Brook University actually used this in combination in 3 different cell lines of prostate cancer and showed that you could get synergistic inhibition of these prostate cancer cell lines through the combination of the fatty acid binding protein 5 inhibitor along with standard of care. Why that's important is oftentimes there's drug resistance built to standard of care or side effects, I call it patient resistance, to continuing with the drug. And so if we can lower the dose of standard of care by combining it with our drug, and we may be able to prolong both the use of the other anti-cancer drug as well as give them some benefit from ours. Last but not least, I'd like to tell you about our co-crystal of CBD. So CBD naturally in nature comes in multiple shapes. And by the way, by now in 2022, I don't need to explain the potential benefits of CBD. It's already FDA approved in the form of Epidiolex, company by GW Pharmaceuticals was the innovator there. It was sold to Jazz Pharmaceuticals for $7.2 billion. I don't need to extol the virtues of CBD, but I can say, can we make CBD better? Can we make a better version of itself? And CBD in nature holds multiple forms. That's similar to H2O, for example. That's a temperature change, but it gives you an example of how something in nature can be in multiple forms. H2O comes in a solid and a liquid and a gas. CBD inherently or made in the lab comes in different shapes. We add another plant extract. It's used as a food flavoring in Europe, tastes like coffee, but it holds it in its lane. It holds it in its particular shape. And that we make for our orally available Artelo 1211. We have the issued patent on this through 2038, gives us a tremendous opportunity to advance this program through the drug development process without generic competition. So a little bit about the company. We have 42 million issued and outstanding shares. Cash in the company last reported was in excess of 25 million. We do not have any debt at Artelo. A little bit about the team. We don't have the time in this meeting to go into details on it, but I would encourage you to go to our website where the bio of all the individuals that we work on, the leadership of the management team, the leadership on the board of directors, and some of our esteemed scientific collaborators that we've mentioned on our website. So hopefully in the conversation today, I've been able to impress upon you 5 key things. One, that we do have a novel drug pipeline. The risk is mitigated against stage of development and the probability of success in the mechanism of action. We have near-term milestones across our entire portfolio that I shared with you earlier, that we're going after billion-dollar market opportunities. Why I mention that is because that would make it potentially attractive to a global pharma to come alongside us and help us out eventually on the marketing side of this. A robust patent estate, which is a given, but I think it speaks to the credibility of Artelo with the patent issued around the co-crystal. And finally, a leadership team that I'm very proud and humbled to be the CEO of this company. So with that, I'd like to close and invite if there are any questions, happy to entertain those at this time.
We actually, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Vladimir Coleman. Question on the next events. Looks like it's the CARE study. Give us an update as to what we're going to see.
Absolutely. So the question was, can we give a little bit further amplification on the CARE study? So the next data announcement we anticipate very soon is the full enrollment in the study. The way the study is designed is that each dose escalation, including to the phase 2, is made after 30 days of treatment of that particular cohort. So after we announce enrollment, people can pretty much set their watch, unless we have a patient dropout or something, that we would be announcing soon thereafter the readout of 30 days of data on those patients and the decision to move into the phase 2 or the decision to do a 4th dosing cohort, which is permitted by the protocol. Once that's done, then the next readout would be after 90 days of treatment, after the patients complete all 90 days of treatment. So there's actually multiple readouts that can occur for us. The 30-day, the full enrollment, the 30-day, the 90-day, and then we'll be moving into the phase 2. Now it's open label, the phase 1, but during the phase 2, we won't have interim analysis or anything like that. It'll be blinded to the company and to the investigators what they're treating in patients. They're randomized against placebo, and so we'll have to wait for all of the patients to go through that process. Does that answer your question? Yeah, thank you.
We do have a question from the chat box, a couple here. Are there market expansion opportunities for ART-2713 in other indications such as anorexia?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what the question is because we don't have the person in the room, but I think I can answer it in two elements. One is we're going after cancer anorexia, but those patients also suffer from cachexia, which is the muscle wasting. We recently put out preclinical evidence that shows that we block the muscle wasting that could be, and through a CB2 mechanism of action, which gives a nice differentiation to what our compound is. The other side of that coin is we're going after cancer anorexia, which we believe is a real unmet need and market opportunity. But in chronic kidney disease and end-stage kidney disease or dialysis patients and cardiovascular disease, a lot of these conditions are accompanied by anorexia, and there's no reason mechanistically to think that our drug might not have an upside opportunity there. This other part to that question is the anorexia nervosa that we're all familiar with. Well, we're not fixing what somebody needs to go see their psychiatrist, for example, about, but maybe we can give a boost alongside and be a tool that the psychiatrist can use. If we cause them to feel hunger, maybe the psychiatrist can then focus in on some of the other issues, the mental issues that the patients are experiencing.
Another question here. What are the upcoming catalysts investors can look out for besides data readout in the CARES trial?
Yeah, so I shared the information that we're expecting on the CARES trial, but we do have the 2 preclinical programs. And as we mature those 2 programs and have data, so for example, we're in a multi-dose PK study with the co-crystal. That data, when completed, should come out. We're very active in a number of studies with the fatty acid binding protein inhibitor program. And as that matures in a preclinical sense, now obviously as you go through IND enabling studies, not every single study is worthy, but anything that's differentiated or that really can inform investors as to the quality of assets that we have, we'll be happy to share that with you.
Any other questions in the room?
All right, well, I'd like to thank you all for, this is Artelo's first, we have 3 this month, but this is our first in-person live discussion with the investors. It's nice to see all of you without masks on and in a meeting where we can have a frank discussion about things. And so thank you very much for your attendance. Look forward to talking to you individually afterwards.
Thank you.